Today, we are going to get up close and personal. This video is about location. This video is about how I found my daycares, and then I'll give you some helpful tips, per my opinion, as to how you can find the best location for your daycare. Let's get started. I found my first daycare. I used Google search engine, and I just would type in daycares for rent and daycares for sale. Was I looking for a daycare for sale? No, because I was not interested in purchasing one, but I knew that if I would type that in, it would yield some kind of results to what properties were on the market. Now keep in mind, every market may be different, as well as the regulations in your state. So always make sure that you check with that, especially when it comes down to zoning. I was looking for a daycare in the state of Maryland, and it was very important to make sure that whatever property you're interested in, that it is properly zoned for education, school, and or a daycare. So I went online and I went to Craigslist. Now, some of you might have a little bit of apprehension using Craigslist, but let me tell you, Craigslist can be very resourceful. Outside of looking for a property, I have found great painters on there. I have found great carpenters on there, and I have found people who did amazing landscaping jobs. So for those of you that may have heard bad things about Craigslist, I, for one, have only had positive experiences, but you also do have to be mindful and cautious and go with your gut. So Craigslist, I don't really have anything bad to say about it, except for that is one of the websites that I use as well to find the daycare properties. So when I was looking for my daycare, as I mentioned, I typed in daycares for sale and daycares for lease or daycares for rent, and a whole bunch of things popped up, and I would just go on each one and just click it just to see what is yielding in the search results. So sometimes I would find properties that were actually for rent, but it would be that they were on the market 20, 30 years ago. But it still gave me insight to know where the property was located and what the exact details were concerning the property. So I got to kind of see like what was the square footage and what were the neighboring businesses around it, and did a daycare end up being housed in that property, or was that property on the market for a long time? So you kind of just use your searches to figure out what's what, to get just an understanding, so you can just start comparing as you go along. So after I found a few properties on Craigslist, I would just go in and type in daycare or school or children or child, and I would just see what pops up. So when I went on to Craigslist, those were the keywords that I used, and I found a whole bunch of properties. Some were located in Maryland, and then some of the results were the surrounding areas. So it would give me properties that were in Virginia, South Carolina, New York, New Jersey. And of course, I'm not looking for properties out there. But again, it's something for you to research and just to take a look at, so you can see what is out there. So that way, you kind of can start deciding what's important to you, what looks good, what doesn't look good, and just start having a vision for exactly what you're looking for. So when I went onto Craigslist, I saw the property that I was interested in, that it was on there. So again, sometimes Craigslist does have lots of scammers and things of that nature. So you always want to make sure that you never send money to anyone that you don't know, and that you don't give out personal information. So luckily, the ad that had the property that I was interested in did have a contact number and an email. So I emailed the person, they emailed me back, and I was like, when can I come take a look? And we set up the time to take a tour, and it was a legitimate business or legitimate property that was actually available. Now, again, this is where you have to be careful. Although a person can show you the property, sometimes they're not the property owner. Sometimes they are a property manager, but they do not have authorization to lease it to prospective tenants. So again, before you give any money or sign anything with people, always make sure you do your due diligence in making sure that the property is available and who owns it, and speaking to someone and making sure you get the proper paperwork and documentation that you have researched. Now, again, I was doing all the research by myself. So what I would recommend is having a realtor, someone who is a little bit more savvy, knowledgeable, and experienced in this kind of transactional approach when it comes down to looking for flex space properties or properties that are properly zoned for daycare. So again, I kind of looked out with finding the property on Craigslist and it being from a reputable and real owner. So I ended up going to the property, fell in love with it, knew I wanted it, and boom, that was it. However, that was not my first experience. This was my like my third experience. So I have done the legwork before and realized what was for me and what was not for me. So I want to say with this being my third experience, I was a little bit more cognizant of exactly what the good results would be and how I would get there. So third time's the charm, as they say. So with me mentioning that this was my third experience, the first experience, I found a property that was out of state. And I was starting to do all the legwork with getting the permits and everything of that nature, only to find out that we were going to need a sewer easement, and that was going to cost at minimum 30 grand. And we would have to draw up contracts with the neighbors to get sewer installed. And it just ended up being way more of an investment that it would turn profit for me in a decent amount of time. So I had to walk away from that one. The second experience was, again, I found this other property on Craigslist and I didn't move quick enough on it. And when you find really, really good opportunities to open up a daycare center, other people have the same mentality and other people have the same opportunities as well. So sometimes it can be very competitive when it comes down to owners or managers or, just management looking for prospective tenants. So the second property that I saw, I just didn't move quick enough. And unfortunately, they ended up going with another tenant. And that's actually okay, because 4 years later, that property was back on the market and I took that property, or I took that chance again, but I moved way quicker on it. So talk about a full circle moment. So keynotes. Use Google's search engine, type in daycares for lease or daycares for sale. Go ahead and go through all those websites that pop up to see what they are. Get a starting point. Then you can start using websites such as Crexi, Crexi, or you can use LoopNet. The only thing about LoopNet from what I've experienced is their properties are not so up to date. So if you find a property that is available, you'll contact the agent, and then sometimes the agent will say, oh, this was off the market 2 months ago. So from my experience, I haven't found any properties that were worth moving forward with that were actually available. Now, Crexi, on the other hand, I did find about 2 to 3 properties that I was interested in. However, they were not in Maryland. They were all in different states. So of course, I'm not looking for anything out of state, but I believe Crexi is a really good source, as well as LoopNet. And of course, I ride for Craigslist. It's also really important to go out in the area that you are interested in having your daycare and see what is available around, like what places are for rent, what are the going rates, and compare it. But ultimately, I would always just recommend having a realtor, because that's the person that can point you in the best direction. They have already established relationships with other business owners, with other property managers, and they really kind of give you like that front edge in terms of being able to know properties that may not be on the market, but that may be coming to the market, or they might just have really good networking database where they can just put in a good word to see what's available and get their client in there, and their client would be you. So those are really good alternatives. So that's how I found my first real property, and Craigslist is how I found my second property as well. So now I'm just going to go ahead and give you a little bit of tips on how to find your actual property and some of the guidelines that you want to make sure that you're following to ensure that you're not making the mistakes that I did, or that you're just doing your due diligence and handling things by being proactive. So the first step, as I've mentioned already a few times, you want to make sure that you have a realtor, and you want to make sure that your realtor is experienced in the daycare field, or they can point you to an associate who is, because you want to make sure that that property is zoned to be a daycare. Nothing worse than finding a space that you love, that you have the vision for, only to realize that after you sign the lease, property is not properly zoned. Now, don't be deterred if the property is not zoned. Just know that you will have to go through way more steps in order to get it approved by the zone, and there's no guarantee that it will be approved. But things happen. Again, it's kind of like the level of dedication that you have, the time, money, and the effort. So those are kind of like the first steps, just making sure you find a realtor who has the expertise and making sure it is properly zoned. And then I believe the next step for me was to at least make sure that the property was up to code with like HVAC, exits, smoke alarm, if you need a fire sprinkler system, does it have outdoor space? So those are kind of like some mandatory minimums that you really want to make sure that the property includes, because if not, you will have to go in and start pulling permits if there are any major work that may need to be done inside or outside of the building. I'm also going to highlight that having a fire sprinkler system installed is a very, very big part of the budget. So it would be a bonus if you needed that and you found a property that already had that installed. You want to make sure that you measure the space. You want to make sure that if there are already delegated rooms, that you measure the space to see how many kids you can have in each room. Each state is different, but in Maryland, you have to have 35 square feet per child. That means that if the room is 35 square feet, you will only be able to have one child. If the room is 70 square feet, you'll only be able to have two children. And this is without respect to them deducting, furniture for the teachers or, cribs and things of that nature. So that's also something to be really, really mindful of. And for me, it was really important to make sure that the property manager or the landlord or the owner was going to support me, because their level of support would dictate how involved they would be. And if I did have any problems and or questions, am I able to communicate with you? Are you able to be receptive to maybe any suggestions I have for the building or anything that I may want to do to the building, that you support me in the fact that you know what my vision and my goal is, and you're open to doing that? There are some owners who are very hands-off, very standoffish, that are just not available. And to have a landlord like that when you're starting off your business, to me, in my opinion, is not as helpful. So that's not as supportive. You're going into a building that you have nothing, that you know nothing about. You don't know what's the size of the filter. You don't know when's the last time that the furnace blew. You don't know, when's the last time they installed new pipes. Like, there are things that you don't know that you learn along the way. And again, with having a realtor who has the experience in daycares, they can help you and guide you or put you in the correct direction with someone who can help those inspections that are not required, but help those inspections become a little bit more thorough and provide clarity for you so that you can understand, like, what is the state? What is the state of this building? Is the building in good shape? Does it have a fresh coat of paint to cover up all the damages of the wall? Are the walls taped? Are the walls taped and painted over? Or when people came in to do jobs in it, that they did, a quality job? So again, having a realtor on your side provides another set of eyes to look out things, structurally and operationally, to know that the building is, kind of okay. We just want to make sure that the building is in good shape so that you don't go into signing a lease only to realize that the landlord is going to make you responsible for anything and everything that breaks except for the roof, because that's not fair. But there's a lot of things that happen that could put a new business owner in debt before they even decide to open. So you just really want to be mindful, cautious, and smart about the decisions that you make before you sign the dotted line. And I would always recommend just having like a plumber come out. Same way that if you're going to buy a used car and your dad is a mechanic, hey dad, can you come look under the hood, make sure everything looks good? Always just make sure that you have another set of eyes because sometimes your vision can be a little bit deceitful, because once you see those green flags, there are no red flags. So just being conscious about it. So those are a few little tips, and I have lots more. So if you are interested in booking a private session with me, I would love to go more in detail or answer any more specific questions that you have in terms of looking for the perfect location for your daycare. All right. Thanks for tuning in, of course. And as always, daycare coach, my daycare coach, Sunny.